Hello and welcome back to another action-packed, adventurous episode of the Bible in 1 Year with the Preacher's Husband. Today we're talking about 1 Samuel chapter 21 through 24. Now tomorrow we're going to skip around a little bit because we're doing the Bible chronologically. So chronologically the next thing that happens is in Psalms 7, Psalm 27, Psalm 31, Psalm 34, and Psalm 52. So that'll be your reading for tomorrow. That's Psalm 7, 27, 31, 34, and 52. But for today, let's jump into 1 Samuel chapter 21. And here we go. Right off the bat, David is running. Run, David, run! Run, David, run! He is fleeing from Saul because Saul is after him. He wants him dead. That's where we left off last time. And what I have here today is a little map. This is about as big as I can get it to blow it up. But this is a detail of David eluding Saul. These are all the different places that he went. So this gives you kind of a visual as we go through of where he is and where he's going and how he gets there. Now, David went to the priest Ahimelech at Nob. Now, this is the first time Ahimelech is mentioned in the Bible. And he goes there, he says, basically, give me some bread, I need some food. And Ahimelech's like, what are you doing here all by yourself? Why are you not with your people? Where's your folks? Well, David didn't want to reveal his real circumstance to Ahimelech because Saul could possibly accuse Ahimelech of aiding a fugitive if he did. So he kept that on the down low. He kept it a secret, so to speak. Now, one of Saul's servants, unfortunately, was there, and his name was Doeg the Edomite, and he was the chief of Saul's shepherds. Now David said, do you have a spear or sword? And the priest replied to him, the sword of Goliath, the Philistine whom you killed in the valley, is here. Take it for yourselves. And David said, cool, give it to me. There's no sword like that. Now, there is nothing in the text of the Bible that explains how in the world the sword of Goliath ended up in the tabernacle when David had earlier put it in his own tent in chapter 17, verse 54. So, if you have any clues as to why or how that sword got there, you let me know in the comments, because I certainly do not. So I'm going to rely on you guys for that. So anyway, at this point, David flees to Gath. Now, he fled that day from Saul's presence, which was that guy that was there. What was his name? Doeg, all right? And he goes to the king of Gath. And the servants say, isn't this David, the king of the land? Don't they sing about him during their dances? And don't they say Saul has killed his thousands, but David his tens of thousands? Remember that song that the women were singing and dancing to after David's victories? Well, David became kind of afraid when this happened, so he pretended to be insane. He acted like a madman to ride him. He started scribbling on the doors and the walls and started foaming at the mouth and let slobber run down his chin so people would think he was just a crazy man, that it wasn't really David. So David left Gath because he was a little worried about it then, since they knew him. He took refuge in a cave of Adullam. When David's brothers and his father's whole family heard, they went down and joined him there. In addition, every single man who was desperate or in debt or discontented with Saul, they all rallied around David, and he became their leader. There was about 400 men that were there that joined him. Now Saul during this time was looking for him, and he said to his servants, why have you done this to me? Why have you conspired against me? Because his servants and even his own family had helped David escape. And then Doeg the Edomite answered, he says, I saw Jesse's son come to Ahimelech, son of Ahitub, at Nob. He got told on. So the king sent messengers to summon that priest. And Saul asked him, why did you and Jesse's son conspire against me? Well, Ahimelech responded to him and said, who among all your servants is as faithful as David? He has done all this good stuff, and he's one of your top. I had no idea that you had any problems with him. What's going on with that? But the king said, well, you're going to die anyway. You and your father's whole family. And then the king ordered that his guards he said, "Turn and kill the priests of the Lord because they sided with David." Saul wanted all the priests dead, not just Ahimelech, but all of his family and all the priestly family. But the king's servants would not lift a hand to execute the priests of the Lord. They're defying Saul as well. So the king said to Doeg, "Go and execute the priests." So Doeg, the Edomite himself, went and executed the priests. And that day he killed 85 men. Now, one of Ahimelech's sons escaped. It was Abiathar, however you say that. But he fled to David. He went and told David what happened, that Saul had all the priests killed. And David said, "I knew that Doeg the Edomite was there. All of this is my responsibility. All their deaths is on me." But it was reported to David just after that the Philistines were fighting against Keilah, and they were raiding the villages there. So David inquired of the Lord. He asked God, "Should I go and help them?" And God said, "Yeah, launch an attack against the Philistines." But David's men were kind of doubtful. They were like, "I doubt I really need to do this. Going up against the Philistines, we're already running from Saul." But David said, "Okay, well, I'll ask God one more time. God, is this really what you want me to do?" And God's like, "Yeah, go right now. Now's the time." So David and his men left, even though they had doubts. David did not have doubts, and David rescued the inhabitants of Keilah. Now, this was reported to Saul, of course, and Saul summoned all of his troops to go to war with Keilah and besiege David and his men, because Keilah was a walled, barred city, and if David was inside there, Saul could surround it and trap him in there. So David heard about this, that Saul's army was coming to lay siege. So David says, "Well, Lord, will the citizens give me up and hand me over to Saul if I stay here?" And God told him, "Yep, they're going to hand you over because they don't want to die," essentially. So David and his men, numbering about 600 at this point, they left Keilah and they moved from place to place. They started bouncing around, as you can see on the map here. And it was reported to Saul that David left, so he just called off the expedition. It was useless to go and attack Keilah if David wasn't there. Now Saul searched for him every single day, but God did not hand David over to them. Now, enter an old friend, Jonathan. That's right, Jonathan. Now Saul's son Jonathan came to David in Horesh and encouraged him in his faith in God. He said, "Don't be afraid, for my father Saul will never lay a hand on you. You yourself will be king over Israel, and I'll be your second in command. Even my father Saul knows that it's going to happen." Then the two of them made a covenant in the Lord's presence together again. But David continues to be on the run. So here he is on the run once again. Saul was pursuing David. He was bearing down on him, and he was catching up with him. And everywhere that David was going, Saul's army and Saul's men were catching up with him. David was hurrying every single day to get away from Saul, but they were closing in. Then a messenger came to Saul to say, "Come quickly, the Philistines have raided the land." So as Saul and his armies left, the Philistines moved in and tried to take over Saul's areas. So Saul had to leave and break off his pursuit of David, and he went to engage the Philistines and fight them. Now when Saul returned from pursuing the Philistines, Saul took 3,000 of Israel's young men and went to look for David again. When Saul came to this group of sheep pens along the road, a cave was there, and he went into the cave to relieve himself. He went in there to go pop a squat, essentially is what he done. And he didn't know that David and his men were hiding in that cave. So when King Saul comes in, David's men say to him, look, it's David." So they said, "Look, this is the day the Lord told you about, where I will hand your enemy over to you, so you can do to him whatever you desire." And then David got up and he secretly cut the corner of Saul's robe off, as we see right here. But David's people there, they weren't happy with that. They were like, no, you can kill the dude. You can wipe him out right now. This could be the end of it. But David persuaded his men, and he did not let them rise up against Saul. He made them be super quiet and let Saul go on. So Saul left the cave, went on his way. But David ran behind him and called up, and he says, "My lord the king." Then Saul looked back and saw that David was there, but he saw David kneeling with his face to the ground and paying homage to Saul. And basically Saul said, "Why do you listen to the words of the people who say, 'Look, David intends to harm you'? You can see with your own eyes that the Lord handed you over to me today in the cave." This is David talking to Saul. He said, "You can see with your own eyes that the Lord handed you over to me today in the cave. Someone in there advised me to kill you, but I took pity on you. And I said, I won't lift my hand against my Lord, since he is the Lord's anointed. Look, my father, look at the corner of your robe in my hand." And he holds up the cut off piece of his robe. He said, "I've sinned against you." And he says, "I haven't sinned against you. May the Lord judge between me and you. May the Lord take vengeance on you for me, but my hand will never be against you." He's basically saying, no, I'm not going to kill you. No matter what you do to me, I'm not going to kill you. We're going to let God judge between the two of us. And then Saul basically says, "The Lord handed me over to you today." He saw the writing on the wall, essentially. "See, you didn't kill me. You spared me. Now I know for certain that you will be king, and the kingdom of Israel will be established in your hand." And he asked him, "Please swear to me that you will not cut off my descendants or wipe out my name for my father's family." So David swore to Saul that he wouldn't, and Saul went back home. And that is the end of our readings for today. Run, David, run. I hope this has touched you. If it has, hit the like button, the subscribe button, and of course click the little jingle bell so you can get notified the next time I upload a video. And I hope to see you tomorrow as we dive into those Psalms. We'll see you then.